Kendrick Lamar, one of the greatest rappers of our time, and honestly, I could take that even further and just say all genres, all artists. He is one of the best artists of our time too. There is no one quite like Kendrick Lamar when it comes to the vivid writing, storytelling, the amazing ideas that he manages to conjure up. They're just absolutely incredible and stellar. And I think if you're out of the loop when it comes to hip-hop, you might think a take like that is a little wild, is a little crazy, but I think anyone that's in the know and has kept up with hip-hop over the years, you wouldn't even hesitate to agree with that compliment that I've just gave him there. He truly is one of the best, and it just seems like now is finally the time to give him a top 10 songs video, because I was kind of putting this one off. I was kind of like, delaying it a little bit. I thought, save it for another day, because when it comes, it's going to be a big event. And I was like excited to get to that big event, because there are some artists that are going to get these types of videos that just are that all level of caliber that I'm just going to be super hyped to do. And I kind of just want to delay them just a little bit longer. But this week I was like, you know what? I'm waking up today. I'm recording a video of Kendrick Lamar's top 10 songs. I'm just going to do it. And let me tell you right now, this is the hardest one I've done so far, and may end up being one of the hardest ones I'll ever do. And I think I said a similar thing about Fiona Apple not too long ago. So if it's hitting a point where these are becoming really hard to put together, then that is not a good sign for me in the long run, because this was not easy, man. I feel like there are going to be many people in the comments saying, how have you not got this song? How have you not got that song? And I implore you to get involved and tell me what your lists are, but do please remember that I struggled very hard to put this down into a list, and I'm sure there'll be disagreements, but at the end of the day, I think we all agree that his discography is that strong that there are so many songs that could be in a list like this. And I think the order is debatable with a lot of his songs too. It's obviously all subjective. This is just my opinion at the end of the day. I don't profess to be some kind of objective standpoint in, this is the objective list. I don't think any one person can do that when it comes to music opinions, of course. So this is what I've come up with, but I would love to see what yours is in the comment section. And of course, check out my Patreon too. You can request and recommend videos like this in the future. You can be a part of this, part of the Discord server. So if you're wanting to see more videos like this, please check me out over on Patreon. Consider supporting me on there. And of course, subscribe, like the video as well. Share this one around too. I think it's going to be a really fun one. And yeah, let's get into the honorable mentions now. If you have watched me before, you would know that I tend to go for 5 honorable mentions and then kick off the top 10. But for this one, I couldn't stick to 5. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I just had to extend it to 10 honorable mentions. So essentially what you're getting here is actually a top 20 songs video in thereabout way. Just the first 10 I'm mentioning actually aren't in any order, but I just couldn't limit it just to 5, because I was just looking at all the songs and I was like, how do I not mention this one? How do I not mention that one? And even by the end of it, there are actually songs that I've left off this whole list, including the honorable mentions, that I'm still stood here thinking, how have I not mentioned that one? How have I not mentioned that one? So we're just going to go for it. We're just going to go for 10 honorable mentions and then the top 10. And then, of course, I do want to also mention that I've tried my best to capture as much of his discography as possible. There are some omissions again, though, that you're going to be like, how have you not got that? The stress. This is harder than anything I've ever done in my life. But yes, let's just get on with it. I'm going to mention a couple from Damn to start with. Not an album that I hold dearly. I've been quite controversial with my opinion on Damn before. I still stand by it. I don't think it's one of his best albums. But I can't not mention DNA and Fear. Fear being my favourite from Damn. Just an incredible track from the writing perspective. The way he goes down the routes he does with some of these tracks in terms of writing is just on another level. I don't need to tell you that if you know his music, but Fear is just exceptional. And DNA is one of his hardest bangers ever, so I couldn't not mention that, because I think it represents a totally different side to Kendrick in his whole discography, and they're both great songs too. I also want to mention a couple of Dr. Dre tracks. He's obviously been a part of Kendrick's journey over the years, and Compton and The Recipe are 2 tracks that I wanted to mention. I think The Recipe is a bit underrated actually, and Compton is just a beautiful sort of culmination and celebration to end the sort of I guess ordinary studio edition of Good Kid, M.A.A.d City, because of course after that you do have the deluxe tracks, but it does technically end at track 12, Compton. I think it's a great closing track for the album, and yeah, I absolutely love it. The Heart Part 5, out of all of the Heart tracks, you know, he loves to do this right before an album's on its way. They're always really fun, they're always really exciting, and the Heart Part 5 for me is the best one out of the lot. That Marvin Gaye sample is incredible, by the way. Still to this day I'm wowed by how he managed to incorporate that into his own song. It's just a wonderful track. Still wondering though, do Marvin Gaye know he did that? Because I'm telling you, man, where is the lawsuit for that one? Do they know he did that? But in all seriousness, what an incredible track. Also, now I want to mention Untitled 03. Now, I do think people go a little overboard with the Untitled, unmastered little demos edition that he dropped. While it is good, I think people going on about how it's like better than most people's albums was always a little bit over the top for me. I don't think it's like anything that's incredibly extraordinary that should have been on an album or anything like that. I think they're all just good tracks, you know, they're solid. But Untitled 03 I think is a pretty clever track. Obviously leans into stereotypes a little hard, but I think the beat and the idea of what he's going for and when he starts talking about like the white person telling him basically, you know, everything's about money, I think that part of the track is quite funny, to be honest with you. But yeah, had to mention that. Wanted to also capture something from that Untitled Unmastered, because I do think it is an impressive demos tape. And yeah, let's keep going. Oh my God, we've mentioned 6 already, 4 to go. And I do want to mention Backseat Freestyle, very close to making the top 10. If anything, this could be 11 on the list, really, because just what a hard-knocking, ridiculous, rambunctious, outrageous track from Kendrick. Some of the lyrics he comes out with are just absolutely wild, but love it. It represents what it's trying to do on the album really well. And finally, 3 To Pimp a Butterfly tracks that couldn't quite make it and are some of his most iconic tracks, actually. This is mad, because this whole section you could argue could be like the top 10 itself. All of these tracks are insane, but yeah, somehow All Right and King Kunta don't make it in my top 10, but they are amazing songs. All Right, one of his most iconic songs ever for what it represents. The Pharrell hook's fantastic too. And King Kunta just being one of his most quotable and fun tracks of all time. I see people nowadays though say it's one of his worst tracks on the album. I never understood that. That's crazy to me. I think it's an incredible track. One of his most fun, the funkiest song he's ever made, honestly. Yeah, I love that track. And then Institutionalized, which I think over the years has become a bit underrated from To Pimp a Butterfly. Like, I know the album To Pimp a Butterfly is incredibly beloved, as well as me, of course. So to use an underrated term is probably a little bit silly. But I think for the track list as a whole, what I see get mentioned the least, just in conversations about the album, I think Institutionalized is one of the most underrated tracks from it for sure. I mean, that Snoop Dogg feature is so iconic, man. I love that. The funkiness, it's a great track. After the lengthy discussion I just gave you there about all of the honourable mentions, we're right into the top 10 now, and we are starting with The Art of Peer Pressure. And interesting that I've just used the word underrated for the last track, Institutionalized, because I think for Good Kid, M.A.A.d City, this is that underrated track from that album, which I think is just fantastic. A phenomenal song, written so brilliantly. I think it starts off so really, really catchy and vibrant, and then when it kind of transitions into that gloomy beat, I think is just fantastic. And the way Kendrick is rapping on this and flowing, he sounds so just focused, like laser focused. I just absolutely love it. I think this beat is fantastic too, again, for what it represents and the lyrical idea. I think for Good Kid, M.A.A.d City, I think it's an incredibly poetic song for what it is going for lyrically. I think it's brilliant. I think, again, just super underrated, and had to be in my top 10, but it is of course at number 10, so there's quite a few better for me.
Morning wake ups, practicing on day ups, tough love. bottled up.
This one ended up being a little bit of a last minute addition actually, because when I went back to it and went back to some tracks from Mr. Morale, it is a very good album, but I never really found myself going back to individual tracks that often apart from Father Time, and I realised, man, what a song this is. I mean, there's lots of good songs on the album, and I think a lot of people would probably have more Mr. Morale representation on their Kendrick list, because I know how beloved that album is. But for me, the one standout is this track. Just love the beat, the lyrical idea, you know, spinning the idea of like daddy issues into the way he does. I think it's really smart, really clever. I think the, you know, insight to a person who may have grown up without a father or a father figure in their life, I think is really well written. Sampha on the hook, I mean, absolutely adore Sampha's voice. More Sampha needs to be in this world, to be honest with you. There needs to be way more Sampha than there is across all music. And yeah, I just absolutely love that we ended up getting a Kendrick and Sampha collaboration. It's such a great collision of worlds here, and yeah, I couldn't not include it. I think it is one of his best songs ever, and it is incredibly recent too. It only came out like last year as of recording this video, but I think it's up there with his best. Of course, there's going to be To Pimp a Butterfly all over this list, just so you're aware already. I'm sure you won't be surprised to see that. But These Walls, I think, is just representative of one of the most brilliant things that Kendrick is able to do, where he can do one verse around a similar topic but spinning it ever so slightly about something else, and then the next verse again he plays on words so cleverly, and he can make each verse its own mini story, but it all kind of comes together and it's all part of the same theme. It's absolutely brilliant. The production on this track is some of his best ever too. That funkiness is stellar too. You know, you've got Thundercat, who had a huge impact on this album overall, and you can just kind of hear that on tracks like this, just that kind of nice modern funkiness that comes through. But yeah, the beat is stellar, absolutely stellar. Kendrick is sounding incredible on this. The hook is super catchy as well. Kind of got a weird psychedelic twist to it too. Absolutely love it. These Walls has to be in my top 10 at number 8.
Take a few M16s to the hood, pass them all out on a black one's good. I'ma put the
When I was thinking about this track and where I was going to have it on my list, it felt a little high. But when this album kicks off with this track, I cannot, you know, deny that I am just so ready to go every time it comes on. And it's weird because I've always viewed it as like, you know, the introduction to the album, but actually when you kind of isolate it and you just go back to it as an individual track, it's just so good. This is where the production qualities of Kendrick Lamar and the artists he surrounds himself with is just next level, and why an album like this is so acclaimed, because just all the details in the production, the beats, the way he's rapping, it's just all next level. And that's something about this album that I just think is going to live on forever, because this type of production is so smooth and so well put together. It's going to be timeless, like absolutely sensational track. I love the way Dr. Dre comes in as well with his little sort of voice note or phone call thing where he's saying like, you know, anyone can get to the top, but maintaining it is actually the hardest thing. And I think actually that's quite an interesting, you know, motif for life, because I think a lot of people do think like, you know, I can get to the top and I've done it now, I've made it. But actually, can you keep it for a long period of time, and can you stay there? And that's the hardest part. And of course, we've seen Kendrick actually for years now has been able to stay at the top when it comes to, you know, rappers of our time that are just, you know, top notch, brilliant, have the hits as well to back it up. Yeah, it's a great song.
when the lights shut off and it's my turn to settle down.
At number 6, we've got Sing About Me, Dying of Thirst, which I think for some people this might be considered a little low. But when you're talking about like the best of the best, you're splitting hairs. And I think to be in a top 10 is a compliment. So don't be too worried about its placement here, because you could have this at 6, you could have it at number 1, and it would make sense either way, honestly. But yeah, incredible track. I don't really know how to add to the conversation with this song that hasn't already been brought up a million times before, because you know how good Sing About Me is. The first half, of course, has the 2 sections of the track are produced by 2 different people, which I've always found quite interesting. And the sample of Bill Withers in the first half of the drum beat, I think, is great. But then, of course, the second half, totally different. And that's something that Kendrick's always been quite good at as well, transitioning his tracks and having separate entities kind of coming together, but they always feel like they're part of one another, even though they do sound totally different. And absolutely incredible storytelling on this. Some of the best of all time. Like, when you're talking all-time rappers, I don't know how you couldn't at this point have Kendrick at least in a top 10, because nobody else out there could make this and then consistently do it across a whole album too, with every track having its own little story that all comes together. Like, it's just unbelievable. And he did it multiple times across albums too. It's just insane to think about. But yeah, I absolutely love the second part of the track though, with the Dying of Thirst section, with the kind of dark story being told there. I don't want to go into too much graphic detail about that for obvious reasons, but I do also like the multiple meanings of Dying of Thirst, which we then find out at the end of the song, where the lady's kind of talking to those people and saying, you guys are dying of thirst. You are in need of holy water. You are in need of religion. And that's another thing that Kendrick is incredible at, making a meaning of a word just spiral out of control and branching off into 5 or 6 different meanings within itself. It's insane. The double entendres, the multiple meanings. Oh my goodness, how does he do it?
I've been through a whole lot, trial, tribulation, but I know God. Satan wanna put me in a boat.
Going beyond that though, at number 5 for me, I can absolutely see that this probably won't be in anyone else's top 5 or even top 10 actually. But this has always been a personal favourite for me. Of course, like I say, this is just my total personal favourite tracks from Kendrick Lamar, and it's not an objective list, and I totally understand that maybe not other people would have this high, but for me, the single version of I is absolutely incredible. One of his most catchy songs of all time, the most rhythmic and just grooviest track he's ever made. I know a lot of people ended up preferring the album version of it because of the live instrumentation that kind of came along with it. I like that version too, but I think when this song came out, I was just floored by it. And when people were kind of dunking on it a little bit, trying to act like Kendrick was selling out a little bit, I remember the conversations. I was there, man. Little did you guys know that Humble was going to come a few years later, which is kind of ironic to think that what people were saying about this song when it came out, to know what he was going to do later on. But yeah, just love it. The Isley Brothers sample is just perfect. The chorus, I think it has a beautiful meaning to it, you know, even though it can be perceived as a little basic to be like, you know, I love myself as a refrain of a song. I think what it actually represents is incredible when you look at it in context of To Pimp a Butterfly and the context of, you know, where Kendrick came from and the background and the environment he's been surrounded with all these years. Yeah, sure. In isolation, just looking at it as a song, you might think that's a really basic chorus, but when you look at the greater context, it means so much more. And yeah, I just absolutely love it. I think it's the Isley Brothers sample that does it for me, to be honest, more than anything. They're one of my favorite groups of all time, and anytime they're sampled and utilized well in any song, I'm always taken on board immediately. Love this track. Absolutely get that people won't have it this high, but it's top 5 for me.
Something told me to keep it in park until I could see the reason why he was mad at a stranger.
We're getting to the more nitty-gritty tracks now though, at number 4, and we've got some big ones to come. But How Much a Dollar Cost here, which you may, if you are much of a stan of Not Real Music, if you are one of those people that remember the top 50 songs of the 2010s video I did, where I got all the guests to come in to do all the kind of skits and fun videos. It was a great video, one of my favorite videos ever. You'll actually know that this song, if you remember that video, was on this list, and this was the highest Kendrick Lamar track of any song of the 2010s. So by that logic, you'd think, oh, surely then this would have been your number one. But actually, over the past few years, a few songs have kind of ended up jumping above it. But how much a dollar cost? Some of the most incredible writing ever. The story, again, he's telling on this track, the meaning of it, I think is absolutely stunning. But one of the things that I've just always been taken aback by is that production. It sounds so good. It sounds so classic, soulful hip hop that could live in the 90s, to be fair, but that modern flair that comes through with it is incredible. I just think Kendrick's rapping on here is so wise and subdued. He just sounds like the messiah that he never wanted to be painted as, because this is why he's held up to such a level that he never really wanted to be at, because the way he speaks, the way he rhymes his words, the way he talks about things is just unbelievable. Yeah, beautiful track. Love it. Every time I'm in the street, I hear yak, yak, yak. Oh, talk about beat switches though. My goodness, M.A.A.d City at number 3. My God, the hard knocking beat that we get with this one is one of the hardest tracks he's ever friggin' made. And then you get that switch into the second half of the track, which is fantastic too. Sounds super like, again, 90s sounding, but that first bit is just incredible. One of the most hardest beats in hip hop history. Like, seriously, it sounds outrageous. That chorus is just menacing and brooding and brutal. Yeah, I absolutely love this track, man. It just gets me up and raving and raring to go every single time I hear it. It's just so incredible. It depicts perfectly the topic that he is talking about, you know, this idea of being surrounded by just brutality everywhere, just violence, and you couldn't have nailed that theme better than this. What a song. And I've been hustling all day, this away, that away, through canals and alleyways. It's incredible to see how much growth this song's had over the years, because it randomly became a bit of a TikTok trend for whatever reason. I'm not entirely sure what that reason was, to be honest with you, but it's ended up accelerating the streaming numbers and is one of Kendrick's most played songs ever, and is continuously like keeping up that pace too. There's going to be a point where it does end up being in the top 100 most streamed songs on Spotify of all time. I could see that happening in the next year or so, honestly. And you can absolutely see why. This track is aged sublimely. Is that a word? Sublimely? It's aged sublime. Aged sublimely. Who knows? But what a song. The friggin' Silver Soul sample? Are you joking me? Who the hell hears that and thinks that could be a rap song? Like, who knew how to do that? It's absolutely outrageous that that was an idea that was cooked up somewhere, but it works so well. The theme of the track, I think, is brilliant as well. I like the idea of money trees being its own little kind of mini concept. Kind of sounds like something a politician would say, actually. In the UK, we always have bloody politicians going on about, we can't just grow money on trees and get our magic money tree to pay for everything. And I like the idea of how it's used in this song. It's so clever. The J-Rock verse, the legend who made Win, also has a legendary verse here too. It's just fantastic. The hook, Anna Wise on this track, I know she gets a lot of hate for her contribution to Real, which is often considered the worst track on Good Kid, M.A.A.d City, but let's not forget, she's on this track too, you know, and she kills it. She kills it. That hook, that extra little bridge that she throws out too is fantastic. Love this track. So saucy. It's just got so much sauce to it. Absolutely one of those songs where I'm like, look, if you personally don't like hip-hop, I'm going to show you this song, and I think I could change your mind on the genre of hip-hop by playing you this song. I think it's got to be one of those kinds of songs. It's accessible, it's got a hook, the rapping is great too. Yeah, I think this is one of those types of songs where it's like, look, there's an alien who's never heard the genre before. What's the one song you want to show him to get them, you know, knowing kind of the ins and outs of the style, give him this. Or give it to someone who hates hip hop and see if you can change their mind, because it's got that quality to it, and it's one of his best songs ever. So now we're at number 1, and I think at this point it's always interesting, because if you can guess or figure out what it's going to be, then well done to you, because there's a lot of Kendrick songs, and there's some big ones that have been left off this entire list. But I think this number 1 makes sense, and I think anyone who's able to predict what it's going to be will not really question or second guess it at all. So let's just go for it.
I'm the biggest hypocrite in 2015. Once I finish this witness.
The Blacker the Berry, the best Kendrick Lamar song ever, in my opinion, is one of the most ferocious hip-hop songs of all time. I still, and I'm not joking, I don't say this often about tracks, but I still get chills and goosebumps when he starts coming through on this beat. He just sounds aggressive in a way that I have never heard him ever sound before, and I've never really heard many rappers ever sound on a beat before. Oh my God, he is out for blood. And does he let anyone off? No. Everyone is a target on this song, whether it's the system of America, you know, the system itself, the way that we've built America over the years and how it's treated people who aren't white. You know, that's out for, you know, that's going to get attacked. Then, of course, you've just got white people generally who have racial stereotypes and treat, you know, black people like they're less or different. They're going to get attacked too. But no, it doesn't end there. It doesn't end there. The final verse where he's like, look, I'm gonna address black people as well, and it's like, you're gonna get something here too. It's just like he just doesn't end. Like there's just something to say about everybody and say how you could be doing better, and it's just ferocious the whole way too. It just blows my mind the way he does it. The balls, the audacity, the things he's saying. There's so much like power behind the words he's saying here too. It's crazy. Oh my God. Yeah, what a track. What a way to completely summarize To Pimp a Butterfly as an album. You know, it's reflective. It's kind of analytical and just fiery in a way that you just don't really get from many tracks out there. It's crazy. What a song. And it just blows my mind every time. It's just the way he's rapping. He sounds just amped up and aggressive. Oh, it just gets me. So yeah, I had to have this as the best track ever, because this is honestly in conversation for the greatest hip-hop song ever made too. So it can't not be his best song if it's that accolade. But honestly, the top 10 of this could also be in that conversation, because Kendrick Lamar is just truly one of the greatest to ever do it. And yeah, I think Blacker the Berry is a perfect track to you know, crown as Kendrick's best ever song. And that is it from me. I'm going to end it there. This has been a long video already, but hopefully you've enjoyed what I've had to say, and you've enjoyed my contribution to Kendrick Lamar's discography and ranking his best ever songs. Of course, there's going to be different opinions, disagreements. There's omissions on this list too. I mean, there's some albums that didn't even get much representation at all across this whole list. So I'm sure you'll have your opinions. Please let me know what your list is, how much you agree with me or disagree. Don't be condescending. Don't be just accept I've got a different opinion and this is my list. You've got your own list. Just be fair, be reasonable. I'd love to see the conversation in the comments, so please make sure you do comment. And subscribe. There's more videos like this to come, more videos like this on the channel already. Do have a good day and goodbye.